Can I crochet a dragon like this, but finished in 4 days? Yeah, about to find out. Hello, my spooky darlings. So why am I crocheting a dragon in 4 days? I'm sure you're probably asking. Well, it's because I have a market on the 23rd of November, and for various reasons, I have to crochet a dragon from scratch. And if you want to know why that is, especially if you've been watching my Crafting a Crochet Kingdom series, so you've seen the ridiculous number of works in progress that I have and could finish, then you will have to hit the like button, and if you're not already subscribed, then click the subscribe button as well, because I will be regaling you with the saga of what has happened in the last 2 days on my next Crafting a Crochet Kingdom episode. So I figured I would do a kind of video diary, I guess, of me making a dragon from start to finish. This isn't going to be a tutorial, but what are dragons, why are dragons, and how can I make a dragon? Hopefully I'll be answering all these questions and maybe some more things in this probably very chaotic video. Now, the first thing when you're making dragons is you need some inspiration. That's kind of what art's all about, is being inspired to do it, right? And for me, making dragons or any mythological animals, my inspiration comes from 5 places. The first thing is from a pattern itself. Sometimes I just see a pattern and I'm like, wow, I really want to use that or incorporate parts of that into a project that I'm doing. A lot of my work is inspired by history or folklore, how we have viewed nature within history, that kind of thing. Sometimes I am inspired by art that I see, not just fantasy art, but particularly more historical art. For example, I made a monk's bane dragon for my dad last year, which was inspired by medieval illuminations. Sometimes I'm inspired by nature. Maybe I learn a fact about an animal and I'm like, wow, I wonder what would happen if we applied that to a dragon. Or I see an environment that animals exist in and I'm like, how would a dragon or another mythological creature evolve within a similar environment? And then the last one, and the primary inspiration behind this dragon, is sometimes I just see some yarn and I think, oh, I want to make something with that. So this is how I get started. Does your list of things that inspire you look like this, or does it look a little bit different? Tell me in the comments. I would love to hear about it. So as I said, the inspiration from this dragon is coming primarily from the yarn, because I love this brand of yarn. So the yarn that we're using is from the Yarnsmiths Lagoon range. I am obsessed with this range. It is a fantastic alternative to using other roving yarns like King Cole Riot or Signet Boho. The other thing that I love about the Yarnsmiths Lagoon range is the colours are super vibrant and rich and beautiful. And they've just released a few new colours, so I need to use up some of this in order to be able to get some more. My sculptures literally survive and thrive on me being able to get hold of beautiful, vibrant yarns like this. So thank you very much, Yarnsmiths Lagoon. Love you. Maybe you want to send me some yarn? Yes? I don't know. No, you don't have to do that. I mean, if you want to, then that would be fine. I don't mind, but you don't have to do that. There were a few other parameters that led me to deciding I'm going to use one of these yarns. I need it to fit this stand, and I know that this Harlequin dragon that I am currently working on fits on this stand because it was measured for this stand. So I needed to use the same brand of yarn to make sure that the dragon was going to come out the same size, right? So this is our starting point. So the next thing that we need to do is find some good accent colours that are going to go with this. Welcome to the yarn shelves. Well, what actually happened was I just kind of moved you like a metre diagonally to the right. So when I'm looking for what accent colours that I'm going to choose, I will typically look for what colours I can see within the yarn that I'm using. So here is a close-up of the Yarnsmiths Lagoon double knitting that we are using. There are a lot of pink tones, there are some beautiful deep purple tones, and there's some kind of almost crimsony reddy tones in this as well. Now I know that I don't want to make this a cutesy dragon. Cutesy is not my vibe at all, and I think it's very difficult to work with pink and not make it look super little girly. Maybe that's just my own trauma that I need to unpack. Well, the vibe I am getting from this yarn, which is probably a little bit off the wall, is kind of reminiscent of Victorian Edwardian medical illustrations of the heart. So I'm thinking we want to bring out the purple tones in this yarn a little bit more, or maybe the red tones, maybe go for like a dark burgundy. And then I also want to try and add a blue into this as well. Okay, so I think these are probably going to be the best options that we have so far. Just as a side note, when I'm choosing colours, I'm always thinking about my tonal values. All of the reds that I have picked to go with this yarn are more purple leaning reds, so they hopefully are going to be really nice and cohesive with the blue tones that I want to put in there. I probably do think a little bit in too much detail about it, but obviously I've come from the background of being a fine artist, so it's hard not to. We are going to be using the adult dragon pattern from Crafty Intentions book Crochet Creatures. I use Crafty Intentions patterns for probably about 80 to 90% of the work that I do. The body and the limbs are going to be made out of the dragon from this book. I will probably pick a head from a different Crafty Intentions pattern. Now I'm going to decide on all of the ornaments and the shape head that I want when we get to that point. I just want to get cracking and start making the body and the limbs. So let's do that. Just made a little makeshift microphone stand. I hope that works. I hope that you can hear me. The crochet hook that I use, I've had a few questions about. It's from Baltec Crochet Hooks and it is interchangeable. I pull the 4mm hook out and then I'm ready to arm myself with a 3.5mm. So we're going to be making the hind limbs first, I think. I really hate making legs. Dragon rear leg, standing straight, make 2. Great. I need to start thinking about wire. I am fixing my crochet to stands like this, so it kind of looks a little bit like a Victorian museum specimen. The Museum of the Woolen Otherworld, if you will. So I've got to think like a taxidermist when I'm wiring these dragons. So I'm going to create a little section in the very bottom of the foot, which will help the foot to sit nice and flat and also give me somewhere to attach the wire to when I feed it down back through the plinth. Okay, that is 2 wires for the hind limbs. Let's make the leg now. You have to excuse my hair today, it was hair wash day, so it's wild. Had to go and get my blanket because it's a little bit chilly. I think one of my favourite things about dragons is how they are interpreted in so many different ways. And one of the ways in which those differences show is in the number of limbs that dragons have. The most widely known type of dragon here in Europe is the European dragon. And they are your classic high fantasy dragon. They've got 4 regular limbs and then they've got 2 wings. Big, brutish, kind of fire-breathing things. People these days know what a wyvern is, but obviously a wyvern has 2 regular hind limbs and then 2 wings. And then you have also got things like the hydra, which can sometimes have no limbs, can sometimes have 2 limbs, can sometimes have 4 limbs. Then you head over to places like China, Korea and Japan, and their dragons tend to be imbued with magical power, so they don't need wings, right? So they just have 4 regular limbs. I would say that those types of dragon are probably the ones that are most widely recognised, but there are a lot of other dragon species that are historically in literature that a lot of people haven't really heard of. So there's the lindworm, which is a type of giant serpent from Germanic and Nordic folklore, which has 2 forelimbs and no hind limbs. You then have the amphithere, which is largely seen in heraldry, and they have no hind limbs and 2 wings. And then you have the even more random ones like the manticore, which a lot of people who are interested in fantasy do class as a dragon because it's a dragon-like being. So that is a hybrid with the head of a man, the body of a lion, and usually the tail of a scorpion. So yeah, there are lots of different dragons. It's often viewed that dragons are kind of the overarching species, and then all these different types of dragon are almost like a subspecies, I guess. And there are lots of different views on how the taxonomy of the dragon works. Did the wings evolve multiple times, for example, or is the amphithere an earlier form of the European dragon? Is the wyvern a more newer species of European dragon that has lost its two front limbs and just kept the wings? Or is the European dragon a newer species than a wyvern when it's re-evolved its forelimbs? But nobody can really come to a consensus on it. Was that round 3 of that, or was that round 4? Busy rambling to you, and now I don't know where I am in the pattern anymore. This is why stitch markers are a lifesaver. Almost done with the first leg, so I'm going to come back when I've got it done. Here we go, we have our first limb completed. So we now get to fasten this off and start on the next one. Alright, I'm going to come back when we have 2 hind limbs ready to go.
Few moments later.
Okay, we have 2 legs. They do look very different colours, but I think it's going to look really cool. So the next job is to make the body. It starts at the tip of the tail here, and then we'll crochet all the way up to the neck. This tail tip is really quite thin, so I'm going to make a start on this off camera because it's super fiddly, and then I'll come back when I'm at a point where it's a little bit easier. Okay, so it is now 7:30 in the evening. I have crocheted this much of the tail. Also had some tea. Macaroni and cheese, if you're wondering. I'm determined to get this body done before I go to bed. As you can see, I've got the wire in already. If I need to frog at any point, then I've got markers every 10 rows. The key when you're working around long stems of wire is to curl them up like this, otherwise you are going to poke your eye out. And I have done that before. And when you are stuffing anything like this, it doesn't matter whether it's long and thin like this or when we get into the bulk of the body, the key is to stuff to sculpt, not to fill. So I talked a little bit about what sort of dragons exist in the general world, but why do they exist? Like, what are the origins? That is a question that is hotly contested by academics, and honestly, I don't think there is one specific answer. But I think it's a question that fascinates people because serpented creatures that are kind of akin to dragons exist in so many cultures across the world. There has historically been a really sweet theory, and ostensibly one that would make sense, but has since been kind of primarily debunked by academics that it's probably not actually the primary driver for things like dragons in mythology. And it is basically our interaction with the fossil record historically. Pragmatically, it kind of makes sense for a lot of mythological creatures. You can draw parallels with fossils that have been found for giant birds that might be interpreted as griffins. But as I said, that's to be taken with a pinch of salt because a lot of academics think that that's just not really a thing. The other notion as to why dragons are such a revered mythological animal is because historically snakes and lizards are scary because they're super dangerous. And in many parts of the world, they still are very super dangerous. A lot of folkloric stories particularly are essentially tales designed to keep people safe. What better way to encourage your kid to not run down to the loch on their own by telling them that there's a great big water horse in there that's going to drag them to their depths and eat everything but their liver. The notion of the will-o'-the-wisp is a classic one. It's a big one from where I'm from in the Fens. It's a story designed to stop people from wandering around marshy areas in the middle of the night when they're probably gonna put their foot in the wrong place and then end up sinking into the bog. And then the other notion is that they are kind of interpretations of natural phenomenon and just elements of nature which we cannot control and we could not understand historically. I think there's probably merit to all of these arguments, but one of the things that I don't see talked about enough is just that humans are innately creative beings. We love creating stories and we love consuming stories. Creepypasta that exists on the internet is a classic example of folklore that has come from imagination rather than the necessity to try and explain something or provide warning tales for kids. They're just stories to make you feel things, right? Hobbits in the Tolkienverse, whilst a lot of Tolkien's work was inspired, for example, by the Mabinogion and other cultures and mythologies and folklores from around, particularly in Europe, he invented hobbits to fit the narrative of his story, right? We do still just invent stuff for fun. Humans love stories and humans love magic. And what encapsulates that better than the idea of a dragon? Okay, so I am now starting to widen the tail out to turn into the body. We're on about row 63 out of 113. I'm starting to think about what head I might want to use with this dragon pattern. I'm thinking I might use one of the heads from the Curvy Dragon Add-On, but it's going to probably depend on what size eyes I have in stock. In every career that I've ever had, that sentence makes sense. I don't know what that says about me. Alrighty, this is where we're at. It is now 9:15, so I'm just going to stop to stretch for a little bit because I am going to push through and get this body done. I'm going to chuck something on the telly, I'm going to plough through this, and we'll come back before I head to bed and I'll show you what the body looks like when it's done. Okay, it is 11:30 at night, and my fill light has also stopped working, which is great. We have a body now. This is what it looks like with a million stitch markers in it. I am going to head to bed now, and then tomorrow we're going to get on with the forelimbs and the head, and hopefully also the whole base together as well tomorrow. We'll see. Oh, good morning, guys. So we are on day 2 of making a dragon in 4 days. I will confess to you that it is 2 p.m. in the afternoon, but I was exhausted this morning. So I've been working on some other bits for the market. So where were we? Yeah, so we got the body. This is what the body looks like in daylight. And then we got our 2 little legs. So forelimbs is where we're going to start. We have a foot. So this part of the pattern requires me to count right up until the last few rows. So I'm going to crack on with that because I can't count and talk at the same time. So I'm going to come back and drop my next dragon fact when we're near the end of this front arm. We are nearly there with this part of the leg. So I've just got 4 rounds to do. One of the most famous depictions of a dragon is obviously Smaug from The Hobbit. Although Tolkien's depictions of him very clearly show him with 4 legs and 2 wings, so a traditional European dragon, in the Peter Jackson films, he was depicted as a wyvern. So technically European dragons have 6 limbs, right? Got 2 hind limbs, 2 forelimbs, and then 2 wings, which in anatomy they're considered limbs. And I don't know if this has been fully confirmed or anything. I know that there are a couple of scenes in The Hobbit where Smaug is seen flying, and also when he's seen bursting into Erebor, where you can still see that he originally had got 4 normal limbs and 2 wings. But the majority of the scenes that you see him in, he is depicted as a wyvern instead. And this sparked a huge debate when The Hobbit came out. It doesn't really bother me. A wyvern is a kind of dragon. I don't really have the energy to get kind of like het up about that kind of thing. But it's an interesting fact nonetheless. Okay, here it is. 1 dragon leg. I'm gonna fasten this off, make the white armature and stuff it. And then I've decided that I'm going to make the upper limb next, because then I can make sure I show off the variegation in this yarn, because there'll be consistency from the upper to the lower limb. there we go. And I think if I just reach up here, I think if I just magic. I am going to be using a different pattern, so I'm going to be going off pattern for this. I think I want to go with one of the Curvy Dragon Add-On heads from Crafty Intentions. This is a pattern made with the body of the adult dragon and the curvy adult dragon head that I'm thinking of using. So here's a top tip: if you are using variegated yarn and you are making a head which is worked from nose to neck, then if you have a look on the pattern to see how much yardage the head takes up, measure that out from your yarn, add a little bit extra and then cut it. Then you can work from the opposite end of your yarn back towards the colour that you finish on your neck. I've not done that because I'm pretty sure he's going to be quite heavily ornamented, so you're not really going to probably notice. But it just so happens that we have more or less fallen at the point at which we might get lucky and have that happen naturally. Okay, so got to the point at which we can start adding the eyes in. These little nose there. You can boot the snoot if you do so wish. I have been granted one superpower in life: to always have variegated yarn match up. I don't know how I feel about that. So the next thing that we've got to do is pick some eyes. I have no idea what vibe I want for this. Normally I tend to sway towards either red pupils or white pupils, but let's go and head to the eye drawer and see what we've got. Okay, welcome to the eye drawer. This is what we're working with. We are going to need either 18mm or 20mm eyes here, so that's these two boxes. So let's take them to the desk and see what we've got. Yeah, I'm thinking we could probably get away with 20mm eyes. The 18s I don't think would look awful. So yeah, I don't think that they would look too bad. I also have a couple of options with blue, which would obviously match the blue tones. They don't look bad, do they? Also got these in a smaller size. Oh, I hate making decisions. So I think what I'm going to do is we're going to try the 20mm eyes first. As I was making the snout, I put this stitch marker in because I think it's probably about where I want the posts of the eyes to go. And then I'm going to put this skewer through to try and just make sure that we're sitting nice and evenly, and then we'll try and fit the eyes in. Okay, I think that we're there. That looks about right to me. This is with the white pupil. I think maybe the pink just blends in a little bit too much, although it does look bloodshot, which is appropriate given that the color scheme we're doing is inspired by like anatomical illustrations of the heart. So this is the blue. Yeah, I think blue is definitely the color that I want, but I still think actually it does look better with a black pupil. That's so unusual for me because normally because I'm obsessed with using white pupils, I just think it looks way creepier. So I'm going to have to trim the posts because I can't get the head to sit flat. I think I'm going to take a leap of faith and assume that they're in the right place. These are the backs for the sinker. As you can see, they're kind of cup shaped, so they will fit around the back of the eyes, pull the fabric in around the back of the eye so it looks like it's really sat in the eye socket. So the eyes are in, but I'm kind of regretting my choice because the issue I have, there's just not enough space in there. So I think I was a little bit over ambitious and I went a bit too big. I'm going to finish the head. I might have to do a little bit of freehanding. I think I might need a little bit more space before I start decreasing, and then we'll see what it looks like. Okay, I think this is the best that we're going to get. The eyes are a little bit uneven, but it's done now. The big thing when you are pinning stuff together is to take your time over it. Another thing that you can do to really help your placement when you are trying to pin stuff is to think about anatomy. It's going to really hamper you if you just go, well, the forelimbs go at the front of the body, the hindlimbs go at the back of the body, and the wings go somewhere near the front. Because if you think about how anatomy works, think about the skeletal structure that's going to exist underneath the skin of your dragon, and you're going to have a way easier time getting a more natural placement for things. Now, when I say think about the anatomy, there are multiple options, and different options are going to give you a different vibe. This pose is inspired by a dog bowing pose before they play. So I'm thinking about dog anatomy when I'm doing this. Similarly, if I'm making stuff I want a bit more of a reptilian vibe to it, then I'm going to have a look at snake anatomy or lizard anatomy. I am at a little bit of an advantage because I will drop some more lore for you here, but I did used to be an anatomist. When I was a zoologist, my specialism was in animal anatomy. But it is really super easy to Google dog skeleton, snake skeleton, horse skeleton to be able to have a look online and approach your project with a little bit more knowledge that's going to really help elevate your game. We might need a little bit of extra stuffing in there, but that's what we're playing with. So looking at things like your anatomy, which I've just spoken about, is going to help you elevate your game. And also learning how to improve your sewing technique is going to be really important for you too. Making sure that all of the attached edges look like they are seamlessly part of one another. You are only going to get that if you do really small, careful stitches. I'm ready to sew the base together now. If you do amigurumi, sculpture making, anything like that, and you don't have a curved needle, you are making your life way harder than it needs to be. So let's go back to the conversation I was having with you guys about the fact that dragons are interpreted very differently across the globe, right? Because I have more to say. Eastern dragons across China, Japan, Korea, etc. tend to be benevolent entities. They're usually serpent-like, so they're long, thin, wriggly boys, but they don't usually have wings because they're seen as being inherently magical, so they don't need wings. Now, interestingly, despite being primarily serpent-like in appearance, they do often incorporate elements of other animals. So they'll often have antlers like deer, or they might have a more fox-like face. Or sometimes they'll have really talon-like claws that really evoke the sense of a bird of prey. There's a similar vibe across the ocean in South America with Quetzalcoatl. I know I've butchered that pronunciation, I'm so sorry. That's a dragon-like deity in Mesoamerica. So he's more snake-like, he's like a feathered serpent. Even when you look to things like the Naga in Indian folklore, they're beings to be respected and who are generally benevolent. Now that is very much at odds with the European dragon. They are generally associated with power, with strength, and I suppose that's always seen as a thing to be respected, but more often than not, it's also a thing to be feared. They can be straight up evil aligned, or just be super dangerous and associated with pure chaos. Interestingly, this take on a dragon is found all across Europe, and in a great many forms. One of our native dragons here in the UK, in England, is the Nuka. And then there's also a Draegagoch, excuse my pronunciation again, which is the dragon on the Welsh flag. As we move on in history in Europe and Christianity very much takes hold, the dragon takes on a new meaning, and in most of Christian art, dragons represent anybody who doesn't really fit that Christian ideal, but particularly represents paganism. So a lot of people think that stories about people fighting dragons and artworks depicting dragons being slain are just fun medieval depictions of dragons and knights, right? Well, actually, no, they're stories about Christianity triumphing over paganism. That's exactly what George and the Dragon is about. Also, around this point, you start to get a real cementing of lots of different diversions of different types of dragons. So things like the amphithere, which I mentioned earlier, it comes into play here because heraldry becomes a huge thing, and dragons are often used in heraldic symbolism. So the wyvern was a really popular one. So that's what I find really interesting. You really couldn't get two more polar opposite opinions on dragons. In all cultures, dragons are really super powerful beings. There is some element of might and magic to them, but the difference in the interpretation of a being having that power as being something to be feared or something to be respected, I don't know whether it's just me, I just find it kind of telling that it's European dragons that have been given that notion of, oh, this is a being that has a lot of power. We must either learn to overpower it or we must slay it. I don't know, that kind of feels like a bit of a metaphor for all the reasons as to why I'm really not proud to be English. I'm not gonna lie. They are all sewn together now. I am super pleased. I actually love them. It didn't take as long to sew together as they normally do, so I guess that's a good thing. I really, really love this pose, and I just really love making dragons look a little bit more dynamic than just sitting there. I am going to head to bed now because it is 10:15 at night. Tomorrow's job is going to be making them look super pretty. Good morning, guys. It is day 3 of making this lovely dragon here. We are on ornament day. I came into the studio this morning and I had the dread. This is going to be the first full-bodied sculpture that I've finished in quite a long time. If you want to know why that is, then you can head over to my October roundup of crafting a Crochet Kingdom video and you'll find it there. I don't want to explain it for a third time. So this morning when I came into the studio, I decided I was going to sit and do a really rough digital sketch of this guy. Doing a digital sketch like this is really useful for me because I have aphantasia. So being able to do this drawing has calmed me down a little bit. This is really rough. I am not a digital artist. There are elements that I'm not happy with, but I think that's just because it's an unfamiliar colour scheme. So we're going to jump in and I'm going to make the horns first because I know I definitely want them to be in this colour. And then I'm just going to use these designs to kind of guide me a little bit until we've got a few ornaments on, and then it'll probably feel less overwhelming. So here's what they look like. I went for one of the spiral horn options from the Curvy Add-On Dragon pattern. Obviously the placement is gonna probably change as we add more ornaments on, but I do like to pin stuff on as I go. Okay, there we go. It's just a very rough placement. I am really pleased with how that colour looks. Right, I think I want to get the expression in on the eyes. So yeah, I need to decide what eyelids I want next. Okay, so I changed my mind and I think I prefer just having the eyelids. So I'm going to go ahead and make some of the face ornamentation. Okay, I think I found the answer in the Impkins book. I have given them a giant ear. I need to sort the placement out of this. I think what we're going to do is I'm going to remake this. We're going to have 2 big frills going down the neck, and then we'll have the smaller back spines in the dark blue coming down the middle.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 stupidest people.
So the abrupt ending just then was because I rage quit last night. I think because I've done this project in a few days rather than over a couple of weeks, I've really noticed how quickly the shift in my self-confidence happens. I get the base done and I'm super excited, and then as soon as I start putting the ornaments on, I panic. And the panic comes from the fact, I think, because I can't visualize anything and there are so many options available to me, it's just super overwhelming. I think another huge part of it as well is the fact that I want my work to be noticed by people. I want people to like what I do, and I want to make people smile with what I create. I guess my brain really wants us to be able to actually make something of this. I have a lot of unpacking to do, I think, and I need to work through a lot of these emotions. You're probably thinking, oh, is that not a bit oversharey, Liselle? This is a completely normal part of the creative process. Every single artist has to deal with issues to do with self-confidence, and yet very few people actually talk about it. Part of being creative is about having the desire to create and wanting to constantly learn and grow, never kind of settling for the fact that this is going to be the best you're going to be, because that's just not true, because you're always going to be evolving as you as a person evolve. But a huge part of being creative also comes with the fact that it puts you in quite a vulnerable position, because you're expressing a part of yourself in whatever form that may be. It forces you to confront who you are as a person. And quite often that leads to feelings of self-doubt. What makes a good artist is when you are hit with those emotions, you feel those emotions, and then you find a way to move past them. A lot of being creative is just being confronted with aspects of yourself that are challenging or difficult or perhaps even unpleasant, and resolving yourself to the fact that you've got to unpack those things and readjust your position on how you view yourself in order to be able to grow in your creative skills, but also as a human being. Because your creativity is innately tied to you, to who you are as a person. When you are a creative person, you are constantly evolving yourself in order to be able to evolve your art. So yeah, I wanted to include this in this video because this is a video about my process of making dragons, right? And right now, this huge anxiety-inducing panic attack having over finishing projects and getting to this point and thinking I'm not good enough is a huge part of my process. I think the answer for me today is that I just need to kind of be on my own and work through this myself. I want to be able to just play around with different ornaments without worrying about having the camera on and talking you through it. And then at the end of the day, I will come back and hopefully I'll have all the ornaments made and sorted and pinned in place. And then I'll talk to you about what I've chosen and why I've chosen it. And then we can get sewing everything together and then they'll be finished. Okay, I think I'm there. It is now coming up to 7 p.m. in the evening and I'm ready to start sewing stuff on. I think I might need to make some arrangements, but I want to start sewing stuff on first. So I thought I'd show you where we're at. So this is what we are looking like so far. I've decided to move the cheek frill, make a larger version, and I ended up putting it down like a mohawk down the middle. I was going to have it kind of curving around the horn and then coming back around here, but it just didn't look right. We've got 2 wings which are fully wired, and I decided to go with a forked tail tip. So this is just something that I freehanded, and then the belly plate is this lovely burgundy colour, so same as the tail tip. I think my next move is to sew the wings on. The only thing I'm not sure about is the balance of colours, so there's a lot of blue over here and there's not much back here. I'm going to try making some spine scales going up the tail and seeing if that makes any difference. If it doesn't, then I might change the colour of this to blue. And I think I'll be able to see things a little bit clearer when I've not got like a thousand bits of yarn wrapped around him. I'm going to get sewing and have another assessment of how everything's looking, and then I think we're on track to finish this dude tonight. We are at the end of the road. It is 10:30 night on the 11th of November, and I have just crocheted a full-bodied, realistic sculpture of a dragon in 4 days. I ended up going with the frills going down the neck, which I'd originally taken off because I didn't think it looked right, but it actually did end up looking the best in the end. I also decided to add in the sparkly blue yarn for the spine scales, and I think bringing the blue all the way up the tail really helped balance the blue out a little bit more, so I kept the red tip to the tail there as well. So I'm gonna go to bed now because I'm absolutely pooped. I need to sleep for 1,000 years. I don't think I can quite believe that I have done this in 4 days. I'm not going to be doing this again in a hurry, guys. I can actually finish stuff. I'm going to sign off by showing you a close-up of this dude. Thank you so much for keeping me company while I've been making this guy. I cannot wait to see what your reactions are when I post this video. Stay spooky, my little storm clouds.